Atlanta veterans report for training camp on July 26th from Atlanta Falcons training facility in Flowery Branch as the Falcons prepare for a shot at a third straight playoff appearance and a 6-9 seasons. We'll talk Julio Jones, Steve Sarkisian, and the overall depth chart for the Falcons as we preview training camp for Atlanta by going one-on-one with Kevin Knight, editor and writer for the Falcoholic.com at SB Nation on the OFN Meeting Room with Greg DePalma. All right, it's Wednesday, July 25th, 2018. I'm Greg DePalma, and thanks for tuning in to the OFN Meeting Room as we continue our NFL training camp previews for the 2018 season with Falcoholic.com editor and writer Kevin Knight. And by the way, this is it. One more to go. 31st training camp preview. We'll conclude with the LA Chargers in the next couple of days. Kevin, thanks for helping us talk Atlanta Falcons football.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, Kevin, my pleasure. So how long have you been covering the Falcons at SB Nation for?
I've been covering the Falcons for SB Nation. I think this is my third season now. And before that I was with Blogging Dirty for a couple of years. So I've been around the team for a while, started following them as a fan probably right about when Michael Vick got drafted. That was my first real experience with the team.
Did you say Blogging Dirty?
Yeah, I think that's a fan-sided site. So
that's
I was with
nice.
them for a couple
Very
of years.
cool. So you've been on some really hip-sounding websites. Falcoholic,
Absolutely.
Yeah, Falcoholic and Blogging Dirty. I like it. All right, so let's. And by the way, since you've been with the team now for 3 years, so you were with them when they started their playoff run the last couple of years. Then this is your third year.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. What I noticed with the draft, the fact that I talked about this before the draft and just slightly after that, this was the first time under Dan Quinn that they went out and actually used their first round pick on an offensive player. And added 3 offensive players. I know there were some people who were wondering about when they were going to get around to bringing in that defensive tackle, and they did in the third. So was it surprising at all to you? Were you just getting used to all those defensive players? Because there really has not been. This is the 31st team I've done so far. I think this is without a doubt the team that has had the least amount of personnel changeover out of any team that I've previewed.
Yeah, they've kept the roster remarkably consistent as much as they could. For cap reasons, they had to let Dontari Poe walk, and he ended up getting a big deal, so good for him. But for the most part, all the major contributors are back. I was pretty surprised about the pick of Calvin Ridley. There had been some rumblings from some of the beat reporters that the team had been interested, but a receiving core with Mohamed Sanu and Julio and some talented contributors, we just didn't think that it was a big enough need that the team would go out and target it.
Yeah.
I personally thought they were going to be taking Taven Bryan at that spot. But the more we hear about Calvin Ridley, the more that we like him.
Sure. I mean, that's the thing. It may not be a need, but he could very well, maybe should have been the top overall receiver. We'll find that out in seasons to come. But he definitely had a fantastic college career, was in a lot of big games. Now, do you see when it happened and you kind of heard about the whole Julio Jones thing, and this has been going on for a little while. I don't know, but I kind of thought, was this also insurance just in case there's a problem with Julio Jones? And now all of a sudden there appears to be a problem with Julio Jones. And I guess the Falcons got to be feeling, okay, well, we got Calvin Ridley, so that gives us a little bit more bargaining power. In a way, I would guess. Is this going to get kind of taken, to something that we're just going to forget in the next few weeks, and he'll be back, and Julio Jones will be ready to go for the start at Week 1?
I'm very much in the pro Julio camp and all this. Pro players getting what's theirs, that kind of thing. But
okay.
Really, when the team drafted Ridley, there wasn't a whole lot going on as far as his holdout. It was kind of more just some rumblings and rumors that he might be looking for a new contract. So it's possible the team knew a lot more than the fans knew, and that Ridley was really a pick that kind of mitigate this and perhaps provide the team some additional leverage. I also think that the timing of Ridley's contract coming up and his development curve kind of naturally coincides with Julio's. Probably, he's arguably the best or a top 3 wide receiver right now in the league. So, but in 3 or 4 years, he'll be getting into his early 30s, and that's traditionally when you start seeing those really athletic wide receivers start to lose a little bit of that. So at that time, we could see, Calvin Ridley emerge as more of the primary threat in the offense. But I'm not entirely sure. A lot of people thought that Julio would be back for training camp, that he wasn't going to hold out. I kind of assumed that he would hold out, but yeah, it's really up in the air at this point. I don't see him holding out of the regular season. I think that's probably out of the question, but the holdout could extend well into training camp.
Now, you say that you're on the side of Jones, the side of the players. So talk about what the actual what's the reason why. Give me both sides of the fence. Give me where Atlanta's coming from, ownership is coming from, with the term left in his contract, and then why you feel that Jones has every right to say, yeah, you know what, I understand there's still a few years left in my contract, but. So give me both sides.
Yeah, well, for the team side, it's obvious that they don't want to set a precedent of redoing contracts with more than a year. The Falcons like to redo contracts with a year left. That's kind of their thing, and that's pretty common in the NFL in general. But setting the precedent of redoing a contract earlier in the contract is potentially dangerous for these teams, and Julio could just be the first of many.
Sure.
So I understand the team's perspective there. The team also, they're relatively strapped for cap space. They have about $7 million, so they're not poor this offseason, but they were planning to use that cap space to do long-term extensions for left tackle Jake Matthews and defensive tackle Grady Jarrett.
Okay.
They're also very good players.
Yeah.
And they have told Julio that they had planned to do his extension next year. So I get where the team's coming from there, and that they didn't budget for Julio this offseason. For Julio, though, the problem with the contract is, and, I don't know if this is the agent's fault, if it's Julio's fault for not reading the contract more clearly, but all of the guaranteed money in the contract is done. The only dead cap left on the deal is from the signing bonus, and it's only $4.8 million over the next 2 years. That's it. So basically, if Julio were, God forbid, to suffer some sort of injury, and obviously no one wants to see that because he's just a phenomenal player, but he has basically no security in his contract whatsoever. And I think it's more that as opposed to needing a raise that's having him really trying to get this new contract done. And personally, we've seen how much that the owners make and all this, and I like the salary cap for what it does for parity in the league, and especially we've seen that in the NFC that I think the salary cap really does contribute to more balanced teams, but
Sure.
it doesn't help the players get more of a piece of the pie. And we've seen with the salary cap going up every year that the contracts for pretty much every position except running back, it seems, maybe Todd Gurley will change that, but they've been going up at a pretty high rate. So the deal that Julio signed a couple of years back, which made him the highest paid wide receiver, has been quickly eclipsed by 6 or 7 other guys. So now he's just barely in the top 10. So I also understand Julio wanting to get that raise, but it's a difficult spot because I can see both sides. But a common argument I hear is that, well, he signed the contract, he should honor it. But NFL teams generally don't honor contracts. A lot of times,
of course.
The 5 years, it's really 3 years or 2 years with
Sure.
A couple of team options. So
Yeah.
it just seems like it's a double-edged sword, and we shouldn't hold the players to the same. We should hold them to the same standard, in my opinion.
Well, what was the amount that Jones got? Do you remember exactly?
When he signed the deal, I believe it was 5 years, $71 million or something like that.
So he's received $67 million. You're saying of that contract?
He hasn't received that much of the contract, but there's no guaranteed money left. So it's all base salary and prorated salary.
For the next
prorated
3 years,
bonus.
3 more seasons?
2 more seasons.
2 more.
This year included.
Just
so this one and then 2019.
So just 2 more. Okay. So, all right. Well, I mean, look, yeah. See, I think we're at the point myself where I don't think there's any danger right now at all about anything. I just think I've seen this play out many times before, and I think what Jones is doing is what he probably should be doing, which is let me see if I can get a new contract, and if I can't, then I'll come back. Now, if he's not on the team on week 1, we can have a new debate and reopen it and get into the whole thing about who's right, who's wrong. But I think we both kind of believe, right, that he'll be there week 1, and that's really all this is let's see if I can get a new deal, and if I don't, I'll go back to camp when I'm good and ready.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I feel it. It would be pretty unusual to extend the holdout into the season. We generally don't see that in the NFL. I mean, we've seen it rarely, but yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. I would like it not to happen.
Oh, yeah. I mean, fans definitely, and who knows, maybe, look, I don't even think, to tell you the truth, I see this getting too far into the preseason, because that's, now isn't he going to get fined? I don't know how much that is. But
I don't know the details. But.
Yeah, so there's going to be some of that. So it all depends on how much he's got to, give up, and if he has enough money where he's not really worried about it. So there's that, and there's also what happens? First preseason game, Ridley, goes for 10-200, and what does that do? I guess Julia will be back the next day. So anyway, we'll play it out. But yeah, I would think that this will get straightened out, and I do think though that. I understand, like you're saying too, with the players and the owners, because the owner definitely has got to say, look, if I do this, then everybody, a lot of key players on this team with 2 years left on their deal, they're gonna want their contract negotiated, and I can't do that. I can't budge. So I think this will get taken care of, and I'm sure the Falcons will be fine, and I'm sure you'll be happy when the season starts with Julio Jones on the field again. But talk about what the Falcons have to do offensively besides Julio Jones getting back on the field, and I would have to think it starts with Steve Sarkisian, right? Because just the same where we haven't seen a whole lot of change in personnel this offseason, even last offseason there wasn't a whole lot of change. There was, the offensive line, there was a couple of things there. But in general, the biggest switch from the Super Bowl year to last year was the coordinator, and the offense just did not figure out a way all the way through to the playoff game. On the last drive, the Achilles heel of the offense all season, we couldn't punch it in the red zone. So what gives you the belief that things will change this season?
Well, there's definitely, statistically, the Falcons had a very strange season, like you said, because as far as offensive metrics go, they were among the best offenses in yards per play and yards per drive and all of those things, which would naturally lead you to believe that, yes, this is a team that scored a lot of points, but they didn't. And part of that was, I think, that, Steve Sarkisian is an experienced coordinator, but not an experienced NFL coordinator, and it's just a different ball game when you get here. So, I think that a lot of people assumed he would transition faster than he probably did, and just getting used to the speed of the NFL game, I think, contributed to Sarkisian really not having a handle on things in his essentially rookie year as an offensive coordinator in the NFL.
Was there a particular play calling that you noticed? Like, why is he doing this when this was successful the previous years? Was there any of that? Like, what was it specifically that you didn't see him able to do regarding play calling?
Well, one of the obvious ones was that Tevin Coleman wasn't as involved in the passing game until later in the season. And Tevin Coleman's just a phenomenal receiving back and chess piece.
I had him on my fantasy team. I was upset all year.
Yep. Yeah, me too. So, but so that was a little strange. Kind of wasting a year of Tevin Coleman there.
Okay.
The other thing was that watching Kyle Shanahan's offense, the man's a genius with his route combinations and the way he lines things up and makes things easy. And Sarkisian just was not able to do that, particularly in the red zone, where we just didn't see very much in the way of creative route combos, and we just didn't see the scheme really helping things. And that's just a difference in Sarkisian's offense. It's more of an execution-based offense, and I think personnel-wise that the Falcons were still built to run Shanahan's offense, and the main part was the third wide receiver. Taylor Gabriel, I love Gabriel. He's one of my favorite players, but he's limited in what he can do. He can do those things extremely well, but he's not a threat in the red zone, and he's not really a guy that can win as a route runner.
Sure.
And that's basically what they went out and got in Calvin Ridley, a guy that can run all the routes, do all the things, and make plays in the red zone. So I'm hoping the personnel will help as well.
Were you surprised that LaFleur didn't get the job? I was surprised because he would have probably kept the same system. So I don't. Did you understand that hire to Sarkisian and not hire LaFleur?
I was a little surprised. I think a lot of people wanted the Falcons to go after LaFleur, and the jury's still out on whether or not LaFleur was really a major part of Shanahan's or Sean McVay's offense.
Yeah, we'll find out this year. Yeah,
we will. We'll find out.
Yeah.
And obviously, if he ends up, blowing up he was with the Titans now, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see if he's got it, and if he does have it, then there's going to be questions. From what I could tell, Quinn had a relationship with Sarkisian going back a ways. He knew him from some point in his coaching career, and I think that Pete Carroll also knew him. So I think Quinn had a relationship with him from before. So that was, I think, had a lot to do with the Sarkisian hire.
Oh yeah, well they did the whole USC thing, and that I'm sure has something. And you see it all the time in the NFL. It's a little club they got. And I know I forget which interview. It was just a few previews ago, and I'm trying to think what it was now. But it was a reunion of a coach who was a player at college. So that's got to be about 20 years ago. And the guy that he hired was his assistant coach at the time, and they had not been together since. But that was the connection. And it was like, wow, really? I mean, it just shows you, man, that the club they got going on in the NFL with coaching is incredible. Yep. They don't ever lose touch of each other.
No, they stick around forever, man. It's crazy.
All right, so let's talk then about some of the new faces. So we know Matt Ryan's going to do his thing, and Matt Schaub's going to back up. I tell you what, I'm intrigued about the long-term prospects of Kurt Benkert. I think he looked pretty good at times. I saw him last year at Virginia. He had a big game against the Hurricanes when they were undefeated and knocked them off, and that was big. So what do you think about what Kurt Benkert might be able to do? Is that something where a practice squad, maybe he makes a team as the third string?
I really like Benkert. I think that he's the most talented undrafted quarterback they've brought in years, a long time. I think he has a legitimate chance of making the roster as that third quarterback. And I think the team genuinely wants to develop him. I know Falcons fans have soured on Matt Schaub because of his contract and the fact that we're not really sure that he can actually play anymore. So I think Falcons fans would be pretty happy if Benkert were actually able to supplant Schaub. I don't see that happening.
No.
For all of Benkert's natural talent, he's got a ways to go as a processor, and he just needs a little bit of work. But with Schaub in there, Schaub's a great mentor, and so is Matt Ryan. And now they actually have, I think they brought in Greg Knapp to be the quarterback's coach, and he's very experienced as well. So I think I like Benkert's long-term outlook as a number 2 quarterback. I think if he's impressive enough, they're going to have to keep him on the roster. I think they're done shuffling undrafted guys on the practice squad. Just no one's really stuck around. So I sincerely hope that Benkert makes enough of a case to stick around as that third quarterback, because they're going to need Schaub's cap space in 2019. So.
Well, and this is also going to be an opportunity for Sarkisian to have an imprint on his own quarterback. And again, I mean, now you saw a lot of inconsistencies from Benkert last year, as I mentioned. Almost pulling off the huge upset against Miami on the road and having a great game, going to Boise State and having a tremendous game and winning the game outright. There were a lot of big games from Bankert, but then there were other games that I watched him play, and he's just like, you were like, I mean, he couldn't do anything. I mean, his accuracy was off. So from week to week, but that's the reason he doesn't get drafted. But that's why it takes a really good coaching staff to see if they can get the best out of him and find out what his flaws are. And maybe Bankert will be somebody we can keep an eye on in the future because Matt Ryan will be around for at least a few more years. Let's talk about the running back position then. Ito Smith is the big name, and he should be contributing a lot. There is talk that he is insurance policy for Tevin Coleman, too, with Coleman in his last year of the deal. But Smith should see a lot of time on special teams. I'm sure he'll even get some touches during the games because he's a little bit of a water bug game breaker. I mean, he had, over 6,400 all-purpose yards in college. So he's going to be exciting to keep an eye on. Do you think that's possible, that he becomes the backup after this season?
Yeah, I think it's very possible. I love Tevin Coleman. I'd love for them to be able to keep him around. Really what it's going to come down to with Tevin Coleman is really, can Devonta Freeman stay healthy? He had some concussion issues last year, and hopefully that's all in the past, and he's good to go. He hasn't really, other than that, had much of an issue with injuries, but the Falcons could find themselves in a situation where Freeman is the one that's showing some problems with staying healthy, and in that case, I think you could see Coleman get a contract with the team eyeing potentially getting rid of Freeman down the line.
Okay.
That's not ideal for the team because that means
sure.
they're going to have to carry two really expensive running backs for a season or two.
Yeah.
They can't get out of Freeman's contract for until at least 2020. So
okay.
That would be difficult. But I love Ito. Ito's honestly like basically a copy of Freeman, possibly more athletic copy that's not quite as good with his vision. But I think Ito can do a lot of the things that Freeman can. He can catch the ball really well out of the backfield. I think he's got, like I said, he's a little more explosive than Freeman is. Not quite the super threat at receiver that Coleman is, but he's well balanced. I think he can be a very good RB3. We'll see if he can take over Coleman's shoes in the next couple of years. But I like the pick. He was definitely a guy that I didn't really have on my radar, but after watching some tape on him this offseason, I like the guy.
Yeah, I also think Justin Crawford could be an interesting rookie free agent to keep an eye on. What about the fullback position? Because they used the fullback quite a lot last season, and probably just as much as any team in the NFL. But Coleman's gone. A couple of guys right now in the depth chart. I got to tell you, I watch a lot of college football and a lot of NFL. I've never heard of these guys. So is this a legitimate competition for the starting fullback job for Atlanta? Are they going to use the fullback as much as they did last year, or is the fullback not on the roster?
No, they're going to carry a fullback. I don't think it's going to be what it was last year. I think with one thing that the addition of Calvin Ridley definitely signaled was that this team's going to go to three wide receiver a lot more.
Okay.
And we've seen that as a trend in the NFL.
Sure.
I know, people basically have caught on to the fact that passing is basically better than running in almost every situation.
Yeah, right.
So I think we're going to see, more teams going to three wide receiver sets. We're going to see that with the Titans too, with LaFleur coming in. But so I think fullback will still be around. I don't think it'll be as big of a part of the offense. But yeah, I mean, these guys, there's some potential there. Ricky Ortiz was with the Ravens last year and looked decent. They ended up going in a different direction. So he's the most experienced guy that the Falcons brought in. But I know that myself and some of the other analysts, we like Luke McNitt. I think he was from Nebraska. Super strong.
Okay.
So, that's a good trait to have for a blocker. We'll have to see how he looks in padded practices. I know that,
sure.
It's really hard to get any information on fullbacks whatsoever from OTAs.
Yeah.
But I like him. I think he has potential.
Okay.
But safe money is probably on Ricky Ortiz to win that job.
Okay, Ricky Ortiz. Got it. All right, let's go to the tight end position. And there hasn't been a Tony Gonzalez since Tony Gonzalez. And I just wonder about how that, might have helped Matt Ryan. But then again, the tight end position, not very easy to find the Tony Gonzalez's anymore. The Falcons have used some draft picks in the last few years and some guys. So what about Hooper and Saubert? Who's got the most longest-term potential? And Paulson was also brought in as a free agent. But who do you think could be the number one guy down the road? Who do you like?
I think Hooper's is plenty good. I mean, I think Hooper can be a tight end one for sure. I don't think he's an elite tight end or, a top 5. I don't think he has that type of upside, but he's fine. He had some really comically bad luck with some drops and some things like that this year, which kind of soured some fans on him. But if you look at the numbers, he had a pretty good season statistically for a tight end in his, I think that was his second or third season. So, I like Hooper, but if we're talking about just raw potential, Saubert has enormous potential. His athletic profile is similar to guys like Travis Kelce, and he's close to someone like Gronk. I mean, he's a very, very kind of freakishly athletic tight end.
Okay.
But coming out of Drake University, which, if you haven't heard of Drake, I don't blame you. I didn't know it was a real place. Try finding tape on that guy, man. Tell you what. But
I hear you. Yeah.
He was their number one receiver for Drake. They were throwing screens to him as a tight end.
Yeah.
So, he's just really athletic, and from all accounts, he's a hard worker.
Okay.
He didn't really know how to block. So last year they were teaching him how to block. He's got the want to as a blocker, and if you have that, I think you can eventually get the technique down. But I like his potential from OTAs. We had one great highlight reel of him high pointing a ball over some of the Falcons' talented defenders. So, he's got the potential. I like Saubert. I think that could be a potentially very good 1-2 duo. And then Logan Paulson, you mentioned, he's basically going to be Levine Toilolo's replacement as the blocking guy.
Okay.
And he's a quality blocker, and that's what they're going to ask him to do.
All right, and then we kind of talked about the top receivers already, but what about Justin Hardy and Russell Gage? I look at Gage, and he seems to be like the guy that they're going to have to replace Taylor Gabriel, especially on jet sweeps, things like that. So that would make sense. Hardy, I'm kind of surprised Hardy hasn't developed more. He had a very good college career, and you just kind of figured with Matt Ryan there that he would be a little bit ahead of where he is now, but it just doesn't look like that's going to happen. So is he just cemented in as a number 4?
Yeah, I don't really see him having much of a shot to get over Calvin Ridley. That's not necessarily a knock on Hardy, but I think that the Falcons, when they drafted Hardy, they wanted him to be their long-term number 3. And I just don't think he's really seized that role at any point. He's solid. He's got great hands. They've been able to use him as a pretty good red zone weapon. He's had, touchdowns over the last several seasons, and he's a quality player. He's a guy that you want on your roster as that fourth or fifth wide receiver, but I don't know that he's ever going to turn into anything more than that, unfortunately. But Russell Gage is interesting to me because he's really hasn't played wide receiver for very long, and the team is actually playing him at cornerback too during OTAs. So
right.
It's possible they want to use him as kind of a versatile, kind of bottom of the roster type of depth piece.
Okay.
Mostly he's around for his special teams. He's a phenomenal gunner. I thought from watching him, I didn't watch a ton of gunner tape. Don't hold that to me. But he was definitely the most impressive gunner that I watched.
Okay.
Out of a couple guys that I looked at. So
very good.
He was mainly drafted to be their special teams guy, he was kind of part of an emphasis this year on special teams where they also brought in Justin Bethel, who I'm sure we'll get to. But with those two guys, I think they have a really dangerous special teams combo. But like you said, Gage has some juice to him. I mean, they used him at LSU to do all kinds of kind of gadget plays, so he could very well grow into that role in time.
Yeah, 4.42 speed, and because the team just did not have a good coverage team last year.
No,
so it makes sense to go out and get Bethel and get Gage, and that kind of adds up. Those are a lot of the little things that you just don't really get. That's why we do these shows, to let everybody know. All right, let's talk about the offensive line. And the offensive line has developed over the last few years. Right now, especially with the addition of Brendan Fusco, you move him into to the right guard spot. and that's a big addition because that was the weak spot of the line last year. So as long as everybody's healthy, this looks like this could be one of the Falcons' better offensive lines.
Yeah, I mean, they have some real talent on that line. Alex Mack, obviously, is Alex Mack, one of the best signings of Thomas Dimitrov's career, in my opinion.
Yep.
Just phenomenal how much of a difference he made.
Sure.
Jake Matthews, not a world beater, but he's an above-average left tackle, and those are kind of a big commodity these days if you look around the NFL. So, and Ryan Schrader, too, as an undrafted guy that they brought in, it was a while ago now, but finding him as an undrafted free agent, he's one of the better right tackles in the game.
Yep.
Doesn't get the hype, but
sure,
he's pretty good as well. The big question is, how healthy is Andy Levitre? I'm not entirely sure how much longevity his career is going to have at this point. The team's clearly counting on him to be here for at least this season. I don't know if he's going to be in their plans after this season.
Probably not.
He's making a lot of money, and
yeah,
he's getting up there, but when he's on the field, he's great. He's a very, very good above-average left guard, so he's good. So really the question was right guard, and like you said, they brought in Brandon Fusco, who, it kind of quietly had turned in a top 32 guard season according to PFF. So he's just an above-average guard in both run and pass blocking, and that's not a line made up of any real world beaters other than Alex Mack, but if you don't have a weak spot on your line and everyone's above average,
yes,
you can basically do whatever you want, and
yes,
that ends up paying off. So
yes,
they've also got a lot of depth.
Yep.
Wes Schweitzer didn't have a great season as a starter, but there were plenty of games where he was more than serviceable, and having him as your primary backup is a good thing. He's not going to kill your line, but he's not someone you necessarily want starting. Also very young, so there's potential he could turn into something else. Ben Garland is the backup center and another backup interior guy, and he's just another solid guy as well. Then they have last year's draft pick, Harlow, who we haven't seen anything about, but he's still around. So,
who do you think would wind up starting at left guard if Levitre was injured? Because Garland took over for him last year. So do you think they just move Garland there, or would it be a competition between Garland and Schweitzer?
It would be a competition. I don't know that Garland played any better than Schweitzer did when they were both starting at the end of the year.
Yeah, that's true.
I think if you've got just one of those guys on your line, it's not that big a deal. But we saw in the playoffs, if Levitre is gone and you've got to get Schweitzer and Garland in there at the same time, manning those two spots, that line
yes,
has some struggles. But I'm not sure who would win that competition. I think Schweitzer has some potential to keep going and improve some more.
Okay.
And like I said, Sean Harlow's kind of an unknown. Had a lot of potential. Just didn't know how to pass block coming out of college. But the team clearly likes him. He was a 4th-round pick last year, so we'll see. He might be kind of a dark horse candidate as well.
All right, let's take a look at the defense now. And up front, you mentioned, Poe is out, and, of course, Claiborne is out too. And Claiborne has got those elite pass rushing skills, led the team with 9.5 sacks last year. So that means McKinley's going to have to step up. Of course, you have Vic Beasley. We talked about Poe out, so Jack Crawford, who was hurt last year, he's got to stay healthy. They went out in the 3rd round, as we mentioned, and Deidrin Sennett was taken. And I watched him play in college, and I was very intrigued by him watching him play last year. 178 tackles in 3 years as a starter, and the interior defensive line is really good. So I know Quinn's really excited about him. So talk about that defensive line. Even though it loses a couple of players, they get Crawford back, they draft Sennett, and McKinley probably gets more reps.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not worried at all about McKinley. I think Tack is going to be a very good edge rusher, and the team is really depending on Vic Beasley to kind of get back to his 2016 form. And I think he can get there. He had a hamstring injury early in 2017. He wasn't quite the same after that. And they also tried to move him around and play him at strong side linebacker and do all this. So they've kind of given up on that whole experiment. So I think him spending time primarily at edge and being their kind of pass rush specialist, that will help him.
Yes.
But it's really, they're really depending on Vic and Tack to kind of cement themselves and play well. So I'm hoping that'll pay off. As far as their other edge guys, Brooks Reid actually has been quietly a quality guy in the rotation. He could play as a pass rusher and a run defender. He's really nailed that spin move. It's been fun to watch him kind of slowly over the years learn that spin move, and he's been able to unleash it on some guys. So that's always fun to watch. And he's going to be their number 3 now, so they're expecting him to kind of step up. And then they brought back Derek Shelby after cutting him, which was a little bit puzzling, but they cut him to save money, and then they brought him back for less money. So I guess it ends up working out for both parties.
Sure.
But he was their best run defending edge, and he's very good at that. But got to be disappointed that he hasn't really offered anything as a pass rusher. And then an undrafted guy to keep an eye on is J.T. Jones, Ja'Darius Jones. He was very impressive last preseason, and he just kind of didn't make the roster due to a numbers game. But I would expect J.T. Jones to actually make the roster as that 5th edge. Quinn loves to rotate those guys, and I think Jones is talented enough to end up winning that spot. So watch him in camp. I think he's got a potential future as a maybe end up turning into a number 3 pass rusher in a few seasons.
Interesting.
So I like him a lot.
Big sleeper, J.T. Jones. Okay. And what about inside?
J.T. Jones. And then at defensive tackle, that's really the question mark.
Yep.
Jack Crawford, when he played, he looked pretty good, but we didn't really get to see much of him last year. But it's clear that Quinn has an enormous amount of confidence in Crawford to be that primary pass rusher next to Grady Jarrett. So we're just going to have to trust Quinn there and see what happens. Obviously, Grady Jarrett's awesome. Just love the guy. Can't say enough nice things about Grady Jarrett. He's going to be their rock, the guy they depend on to make plays in the interior. Then they brought in Tyrell Maclean, who was kind of miscast as a 3-4 defensive end in Washington. Now he's going to be back playing as there's a lot of debate as to whether he'll be playing the 1-tech or the 3-tech on base downs. Either way, he's going to be contributing to that base package. And then Deidrin Sonat is the other guy. I like him a lot. With rookie defensive tackles, you never really know how quickly they're going to adjust and hit the ground running. It would be great if we could get a lot of contribution from him, but I think at a minimum they'll be expecting him to play on base downs as the nose or the 3-tech. Him and McLean probably taking a lot of snaps, and that way they can hopefully keep Jarrett relatively fresh for those passing downs.
All right, let's take a look at the linebackers now, and with Beasley out of the way, so he doesn't have to worry about playing that spot. Again, as you mentioned, it really wasn't a position that he needed to waste any time in. So, and they don't need him there anyway with Jones, Campbell, and Riley. That's a nice 3. Of course, Jones is the big star of the unit. Campbell had a big year too last year. Excellent cover linebacker. So it's a really good combination, Jones and Campbell, especially Jones, of course, who might be the best player on defense on the entire team. And then you got Riley. Riley's the one guy that probably has to do a little bit better job, but he's not on the field as much as Campbell and Jones. The problem I have with the unit is the depth. So, like if anything happens to either Campbell or Jones, that might be an issue. They did bring in, they got the rookie they brought in from Yale, but maybe he'll just play special teams. I'm intrigued about Anthony Wimbush. I don't know if he's going to play more defensive end or linebacker. He had a big college career. So talk about what you see, what you like about this trio, and about whether or not you feel that there's any hidden depth.
Yeah, I mean, Deion Jones is fantastic. That was just a great draft pick. So I'm totally confident in his abilities. Devondre Campbell, also very good draft pick. I think he's been playing very well. Where he really excelled last year was when he was able to play strong side linebacker. And I think the long-term plan was to have Duke Riley take over at weak side so that they could use Campbell at strong side in the base package.
Okay.
But Riley just didn't get it his rookie year, and that happens sometimes. It just takes you a while to adjust. And the thing with Riley was that he actually was in position to make plays a lot. He just couldn't finish. So, just the game's a little too fast for you. You need some more time. Quinn's been gushing about Riley this offseason, so we're very hopeful that he can kind of step up this year and finish some of those plays. But Riley's kind of like a carbon copy of Jones, not quite as athletic, but same type of player, very good in coverage, quick diagnoser, and can run all over the field and make tackles. So I think ideally the team wants to have those three linebackers on the field and base, with Campbell kicking down to play strong side. And Campbell's kind of a tight end specialist. I think he matches up really well with tight ends. And Riley is kind of a running back eraser. We've seen him cover just about every running back effectively. So they've got really a fantastic group of cover linebackers. Against the run, they're not quite as good, but like I discussed on the offensive side, generally passing is the way to go in today's NFL. So run defense just isn't as important. It is obviously good to be able to have linebackers that can do both, but I think
Sure.
Quinn is kind of on the cutting edge here with focusing on coverage more than run stopping. But Kamal Ishmael's the fourth guy, and he used to play safety, but they moved him to linebacker because he can't cover. But he might be the most sound, technically, tackler on the whole team. He can just pile up tackle numbers. He's very, very sound in his run fits and stuff like that. So
okay.
I like Ishmael. He's just a solid backup, but like I said, he can't really cover. So him replacing Dion is not ideal. Him replacing someone like Campbell, they could probably more get away with. So my guess is they're hoping that if Dion were to miss time, that Duke Riley would kind of be able to step in and fill in that role. But the other guy they brought in is Foye Oluokun from Yale, who the team apparently likes, and he's definitely slotted to have a big role on special teams.
Yep.
He's another one of those smallish linebackers, basically in the same mold, who can cover really well, questionable run stuffing. So if they can get anything out of him on defense, that would probably be a plus this year. Long term, they probably view him as another depth piece.
So Ishmael would be the top backup.
Yes.
Okay. And by the way, where does Winbush fit in? Where's he going to get?
I like Winbush. I looked into him a bit as well. I think he and JT Jones are kind of competing for that same spot.
A defensive end. Okay. Isn't it like an edge rusher, situational guy? Okay.
Yeah, and the other part is that both Winbush and JT Jones have been getting reps at strong side linebacker as well.
Oh, okay.
So that, being able to pitch in at that spot will probably be the difference between which one of them ends up making the team. I think Winbush has a shot. I think Winbush is a shoo-in for the practice squad at worst, and it'll really just come down to who's more impressive, Jones or Winbush, as far as their contributions in training camp and in the preseason. But both guys, I think, are similar players. Winbush probably has a little more coverage ability. Jones probably a little bit better as a hand in the dirt defensive end. But both guys that I like, I think Jones has the slight edge because he's been with the team for a training camp already.
All right, and we'll take a look at the secondary now, where Alfred, Trufant, and Poole all return as the top three corners. And then the team went out and drafted Isaiah Oliver, which was a really nice pickup. He'll not only help at corner, but also immediately at special teams. So basically, you bring back your top three corners, and that's one of the top trios in all of football. So you're really good there, and then you add a second-round draft pick. So they're pretty set at that corner position. And by the way, does KZ play more safety than he does corner?
He's officially listed as a safety now, but they do kind of use their safeties as a multiple position.
Okay.
So it's very possible you'll see him play kind of like a nickel role. They do that with Ricardo Allen sometimes, but he is officially listed as a safety now.
Okay. So anyway, the corners are really good. Bethel was brought in, as you mentioned, but he's more of a special teams guy. And then the safeties are also back with Neal and Allen. So really, I can not just limit it to the corners. You bring back your top 5 DBs and one of the better secondary units in all of football. And then you throw in guys, as I mentioned, you throw in Oliver as a second-round pick. KZ is probably the top, the top 6th guy, right? And then Oliver now is going to get a chance to potentially, maybe be a starter in a year or two when one of the 3 corners winds up exiting because of salary cap issues?
Yeah, I mean, I think Oliver was one of my top 3 corners in the entire draft. So the fact that they were able to get him in the second round was kind of a steal to me. I was shocked. He's a game changer at corner, and he was really kind of the missing piece of that secondary. The Falcons have two very, very good corners in Trufant and Alford, and Poole is very good as well. Not so much as a pure cover guy. I would say he's just average in coverage, but as an open field tackler and a run support corner, he's among the best, and he can blitz like a demon. So he's got his role, and he's good in it. But what they were missing was a guy that can match up on the big receivers, and that's what Oliver does really well. He's got those freakish arms. I think he's in the 99th percentile for arm length or something crazy like that.
All right.
So he was kind of brought in, I think, to be their chess piece to go up against Mike Evans and Michael Thomas and Devon Funchess and the tall receivers they got to play twice a year. And I think we'll see him get a shot immediately. We know Quinn is not afraid to throw rookies right into the lineup. I don't know that he'll necessarily just outright supplant Brian Poole, but I think based on matchup, we could see Oliver early in the season.
Who would handle the nickel job in that respect?
So what will happen is that Desmond Trufant and Robert Alford are not going to come off the field. So Alford will play the slot in that situation.
Got it.
He's actually shown he looks really, really good in the slot. I think he could have easily made a living as a slot corner if he wasn't so good on the outside. But he'll do great in the slot if they kick him in there.
All right. And by the way, Cooper might be an interesting rookie free agent to keep an eye on. He's in the secondary. Anybody else? And then, of course, the special teams. You've got Bryant and Bosher coming back. Bryant is just the man. What can you say about Matt Bryant and all the missed opportunities that the Falcons had to score touchdowns was a big boon to Matt Bryant and anybody that had him like I did on my fantasy team. So I was happy about that. But the big issue, though, is we talked about coverage units. That should be a lot better this year with more talent in there. And then also Andre Roberts is gone, or at least he's gone for now. We'll see if he winds up making the Jets or not, because that's up in the air. But the fact is that there are now players that could take over his spot. We mentioned, Russell Gage, Ito Smith, and others. So, and Roberts was more of a kind of a professional, a pro, a good player, but he wasn't a special player. He wasn't a dynamic player. But Falcons seem to have a couple of guys that might be able to be, difference makers in the return game, right?
Yeah, I mean, they brought in a ton of guys to compete there. They've mentioned like 5 or 6 different guys. Russell Gage. They mentioned Isaiah Oliver. I don't know that they really want him playing there long term, but he did return some kicks in college. Justin Hardy is a guy that they tried out last year, and he's kind of had a history of just being like a solid returner. Also, 2 guys from last year, undrafted guys, Marvin Hall, who ended up sticking around with the team, and then Reggie Davis, who is back from last offseason. So those 2 guys both looked good last preseason returning kicks, so they'll be in the mix as well. But really, they just kind of brought in 5 or 6 guys plus. I don't know a ton about the other undrafted wide receivers, but I know some of them they've definitely got some juice. So there's going to be a full-on competition between like 5 or 6 different guys to see who can win that. And I don't know that it'll be a strength, but I think they're probably going to get about the same production they got out of Roberts last year.
And Kevin, do you think that if the team were to, let's say, the first month of the season, and it doesn't appear that the Falcons have improved on their red zone offense, what happens? Anything? I mean, because the fans are going to start getting restless, that's for sure.
I mean, I know there'll be several angry articles from me and some other guys, that's for sure. But as far as if you're asking if they'll fire Stark, I don't think that they will. That's just not their style.
Sure.
They're not really a mid-season firing team. We saw, I think it was during the 2016 season or it was some other, I can't even remember, but the previous defensive coordinator, I can't even remember his name, but basically it leaked that Quinn had taken over the defense, and they actually kept the defensive coordinator on staff until the end of the year and then fired him.
Interesting.
But Quinn had really taken over play calling. So they're very methodical, and they're very respectful to their coaches. Sometimes, people might consider to a fault. So I don't know that they would actually fire Sarkisian mid-season, but there's a lot of speculation that they brought in Greg Knapp as an emergency backup to Sarkisian.
Okay.
Not that I would be particularly excited about a Greg Knapp offense in Atlanta either.
All right.
I don't think that they'll fire him unless they're really in the tank as an offense. But anything can happen. So if they're really genuinely terrible with this much talent, that could happen. But it's difficult to find a replacement mid-season.
That's true. All right, sounds good. I appreciate it, Kevin. You did a great job, and you definitely got me ready to understand what to look forward to for the Atlanta Falcons at camp this year, and hopefully we'll be getting an opportunity to talk again during the regular season. I'd look forward to that.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks, Kevin. All right, that's Kevin Knight. And, again, good to have him on. We actually were able to get him on. I think we just confirmed. I think we just kind of spoke earlier today, real early, kind of early morning, maybe early afternoon. So not bad to be able to hook up with Kevin and get that done on short notice. That's just the way it is. Sometimes you get lucky and sometimes you don't, like the LA Chargers, because we are down to one more team for our training camp previews, and that is the LA Chargers. All right, now I haven't booked anybody yet. I thought I booked somebody. And that's just what happened with the Atlanta Falcons. I had thought I booked somebody, but it kind of got delayed, and finally I had to make a move and get someone else, and I was very lucky to get Kevin on short notice. I haven't been so lucky with the Chargers, but I do have 2 days to get it done. So I will make sure I do whatever I can to get this Charger preview in before Friday. But, hey, Charger fans, I'm trying. Trust me. All right, that'll wrap it up here for the OFN Meeting Room. And, again, thanks to Kevin Knight for joining us. Once again, Kevin is the editor and writer for thefalcoholic.com at SB Nation. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at PrimeSN, as in Sports Network, because we let you know when all of these interviews and all our programming is available on demand. Once the training camp previews are over this week, we're going to turn our attention to college football conference previews, so that's coming up soon. And then we'll preview the NFL season once we get close to the end of the preseason. So it's still a long way to go before we do that, predictions and all that other stuff. And then we'll have interviews and bring some of these guys back once again when needed. And so that's still coming up. We got, another, it's August already almost. Isn't that awesome for being a football fan? This is what you live for. All right, that'll wrap it up here for the OFN Meeting Room on this Wednesday, the 25th of July. If you're listening live, I'm Greg DePalma. We'll see you again next time. Our Lads Football Radio Network, where it's never too early to think about the start of the 2018 football season.